Good afternoon, all. Your Excellencies, dear friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we have an exciting panel. We have 4 experts on representing their respective government. Let me introduce you the panelists from my left. Nestor Alfred, CEO of St. Lucia Citizenship Investment Unit. Miss Melinda Françoise, working at the CIU in Commonwealth of Dominica. We have Mr. Rahman Al-Bayad from Turkey, Investment Turkey, here in office in Dubai. And Mr. Les Khan, head of the Citizenship Investment Unit in St. Kitts and Nevis, the Federation. The time they have allocated us is 45 minutes, and we're going to keep about 5 minutes at the end for any questions or answers. In the last years, our industry has faced many challenges, and I don't think it's over. It's far from over. Recently, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, they published a report on our industry, primarily the residency by investment and citizenship by investment programs, the golden passports or golden visas. They did not give us a high mark. So therefore, we thought it would be nice if we had a panel so they can talk about their programs. I guess many people don't like what we're doing because we have commoditized citizenship. We have turned the residency by investment and citizenship by investment programs into a business. Our clients are the rich, and mostly they're questioning our clients' motives as to why they're applying into the CBIs or the RBIs. So therefore, let's just move in quickly to the panel because I think they have more to say to us. I'm going to ask them maybe if you can briefly, just for 2 minutes, give a brief summary of your program because I see many people who are not from our industry, so they might be interested in what are the programs. St. Lucia, could you give us a brief description of your program?
Good afternoon, everybody. Someone has already introduced me, but my name is Nestor Alfred, and I'm the CEO of St. Lucia's Citizenship by Investment Program. It's a pleasure to be here in Abu Dhabi. Actually, it's my very first visit to this country, and I'm quite impressed with what I'm seeing. In regard to St. Lucia has only been in this program for the past 3 years. Although only for 3 years, I think we are quite happy with the level of participation and interest that persons have in the program. One of the things I can say about this program, St. Lucia's program, and we feel very proud of this, is that St. Lucia's program, there is a strong focus, not so much on whether someone has the capacity to make a donation to the fund, to the program, but more importantly is in regard to the level of due diligence. In other words, before anybody could be given this passport, this citizenship under this program, we want to make sure that this person is someone who's worthy of the grant of citizenship. So essentially the program is really focused on extensive due diligence, whether it's through the private due diligence firms that we hire, as well as law enforcement.
Melinda, about Dominica.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Melinda Françoise, representing the Commonwealth of Dominica. Dominica Citizenship by Investment Program has been in existence for 25 years. I can say we are versed and good at what we do. And most recently, Dominica has been ranked the best citizenship by investment program by the FT. And this is the second year, actually. One of the things that we pride ourselves in is our quality of applicants in terms of due diligence processes that we use, as well as our speed and ease of processing. We work with top-class due diligence companies who are experienced in investigations and understanding risk. And one of the things that they do is that they use the methodology to compare against best practices, and they do an in-depth 360 check of the applicants. And this is something that's important to us. And being in the program for many years, we have come across different challenges, and hopefully with the new publication, we are hoping that we can help explain why is it doesn't really apply to Dominica and the other programs in the Caribbean alike.
Thank you very much. Sir?
Good afternoon. I am the investment advisor of Presidential Investment Office of Turkey. Actually, this is my third year I am joining to that program. Before, I was not coming like a comfort way because we actually applied program 2 years ago in 2017. But there was some unclear points, so we were not able to give the response to the questions. But this year, I am much more comfortable because just nearly 2 months ago, a new program has been announced, and the Turkish government is eased the rules of the citizenship program, and it is quite attractive. And I can give the characteristic of that program if you want.
Yes.
Actually, there are 4 or 5 sections for getting the citizenship for Turkish citizenship. One of them is buying a real estate. It was before $1 million. If you are buying any real estate, you are getting the Turkish citizenship. It was granting, but now it's reduced to $250,000. And Turkey, from that perspective, for buying a real estate is a very good time. I am the investment advisor because of the currency issues. Now it is the right time for buying a real estate. The second issue is for investing, depositing money is a second tool. You can do that one. It is around $500,000 if you deposit to any bank, and if you hold for during the 3 years, you are able to get also citizenship, Turkish citizenship. But you don't need to wait 2-3 years. And you can make application, and the bank is giving rehin on it, and after 4 or 5 months later, you are getting this citizenship from the government. And the other one, if you are buying the bonds also, you can get the citizenship, this other section. The good thing for depositing money and for buying the bonds, because nowadays Turkish bank is giving very high interest rates. And in Turkish lira, I can say to you is 25% you can get per year returns. And for the dollar base, you can get 8% to 10% returns. And from that perspective, it's also good because in the world you cannot find such kind of good returns, and that's good. Another way, if you are investing fixed assets, and if you are establishing a company around $500,000, also you are able to get this citizenship. This is another side of that one. And the last one, if you open a company and around 50 staff is working with you, also you are able to grant to getting this citizenship from Turkey. The rules now is much more definite, much more practicable, and also there are law companies who's following those issues on behalf of that one. For this reason, I am saying Turkey now is a good destination also for getting that citizenship.
So this is my third year of being in Abu Dhabi. It's a great conference to be involved in. St. Kitts and Nevis is the oldest program. In fact, in next year, we'll be celebrating 35 years of CBI and being the leader in the program. We have over 12 to 15,000 applicants who are citizens, and they come from different parts of the world, mainly China and the Middle East. We continue to be innovative in our products. We continue to be innovative in our due diligence processes. It's one of the strongest in the world. And actually, this week, we are passing legislation that has been approved by Cabinet that will be taking fingerprinting and identity verification as a mandate for all applicants. So we are strengthening our program as we go forward. But doing good due diligence is one key factor that brings us ahead of the other programs. Main criteria or main factors out there is basically the number of real estate projects that we have and high-end projects. The Park Hyatt just went live. We're expecting the Ramada Inn to go live in the first quarter of next year. The Radisson Hotel will be going live in the first half of next year. And we have a number of boutique hotels that are going on. We also just signed a deal earlier in the year to bring 6 senses into St. Kitts and Nevis. This brings us to be one of the leaders with 5 branded hotels, including the 4 Seasons. So we continue to be a leader in this business. We continue to be strengthening our due diligence processes. And we offer our clients many different alternatives, inclusive of the real estate, but also in a contribution.
Thank you very much. Well, my next question is just to you, Les Khan. If we look at the applicants and their investments, I mean, in St. Kitts, there's basically two possibilities: either a donation into your sugar fund or the real estate approved projects. Can you tell us a little more about success stories, about citizenship program, and maybe real estate, especially maybe Park Hyatt? I think they've been named the best hotel in the Caribbean, no?
Yes, and the Park Hyatt is a success story in itself. I mean, it was a little delayed in going live, but it went live at the end of last year. And it has really set St. Kitts and Nevis as a prime location for tourism. And this is our second industry in the country. So we expect with the new hotels coming on board, with the Six Senses, with Ramada, with Radisson, to continue to be a success story.
And also important to mention in St. Kitts that originally when they started, the investment for the real estate was 400, and recently last year we reduced it by...
Yeah, we did not reduce the option. What we created was a third option or a second option in the real estate category. So we have the 400,000 for title properties and shares, but we allowed our developers to split and have to go to 200,000 if you were an approved project, and if you were a 5-star or a high-end hotel, we allowed a 200,000 share.
To have shares.
Yes.
To have shares, yes.
Yeah.
Dominica, you have also two options in your program. You have the donation and real estate, and I believe there's a 5-star hotel going to be completed very soon, the Kempinski. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, we have the Kempinski being constructed by the Range Development and Range Developers, and this option basically allows an investor to pay $200,000 apart from the processing fees and the government donation required.
Yes.
The project should be completed by 2019. Last year, when Hurricane Maria struck, it delayed the project a bit, but we are back on stream and we have a number of applications coming in for the real estate. We also have other real estate options, including the Anichi Resort and Spa, which is an up-and-coming real estate project being constructed in the north of the island, as well as the Jungle Bay Villas. Jungle Bay Villas was originally a Dominican project, which was damaged by the hurricane, but it's been reconstructed in Sufria. It's actually going to be completed very soon. And one of the things that we do, the next option is the government fund and the housing project development.
Well, so far all projects are in St. Kitts and St. Lucia must be government approved.
Well, and Dominica.
In Dominica?
Yes.
Dominica and St. Kitts, yes.
Absolutely.
In St. Lucia, you only have one option so far, no? The donation. You don't have a real estate option yet, but there's a few projects coming, I think, in St. Lucia real estate.
Yeah, actually that's incorrect. There's more than one route for one to gain citizenship in St. Lucia. There is the donation of $100,000. There is the donation, but there's also the real estate route as well, and I'll speak about that. There is the government bond, which is non-interest bearing, but is given back to you after 5 years. And there is the enterprise approved project route, which is more geared towards major projects like road building, bridges, medical universities. But let me just say this, Sam. In regard to the real estate, the government of St. Lucia has looked at seriously in regard to its input into that particular route. Now, St. Lucia does not have those brands, but I can tell you St. Lucia is one of the #1 tourist destinations in the region. So brands are important. I think there's no two way about this. But St. Lucia has a focus of ensuring that its tourism product is sustainable. There are several factors that one has to consider in regard to its tourism sector. The ellipse, the state of the infrastructural state of the country, its accessibility to health. So there's a myriad of issues that one has to take into consideration. And for St. Lucia, the real estate route is one that St. Lucia guards very closely. As we speak now, there are 2 real estate projects that are, well, there's one on our website, which we've approved, and there's a second one, hopefully in the next few weeks, should be approved. And those 2 are going to be significant players. One is Fairmont, and the other one I can't make mention of right now. But I think those 2 projects are really going to increase our room stock closer to our vision of having 2,000 rooms by the end of 2020. So I believe in regard to St. Lucia, the real estate route is one that we are very cautious about. And then we want to make sure that our tourism product is grown in a very sustainable way. And there are several factors that one has to take into consideration when you grow your tourism product. And St. Lucia's focus is to ensure that all of those variables in a way can sustain the growth of brand hotels, et cetera. So at this point in time, the real estate route is one that we are looking at very cautiously, and you will not see St. Lucia approving hundreds of real estate projects. It's not going to happen in St. Lucia, but it's going to be done in a very sustainable way, and we're only interested in speaking to developers who are going to make a difference in this country.
Thank you. Well, it appears the Caribbean seems to favor specific projects, and in order for you to opt for the real estate option, it needs to be designated. But in Turkey, we don't have that restrictions. It's like you can buy real estate from anyone or any company.
Yes, for Turkey, there is no any specific project that you can invest and then you can get the citizenship. Actually, you can buy any kind of real estate. You can buy land, you can buy flat, you can buy a factory. It doesn't matter, but it should be invested and it should be held during the 3 years. That's the requirement. And if you do that one, you can get your citizenship. There's no such kind of. But we segregate the program according to that one: deposit, bond, real estate, and then fixed asset investments. We segregate it like that. For the reason there is no any kind of restriction. You can buy any kind of things. You can get from the minister approval that yes, you made that application. After granting of that one, there is just one rule. Government approved, there are expertise companies. It should be evaluated. If evaluation is equal to $250,000 or more than this one, you can continue your process and you can buy your real estate. After 3 years, you can sell your real estate anytime but you should hold 3 years. You can sell your real estate and you can take out your money outside of the country. There is no such kind of any restrictions. But the good thing of the program, most probably after 4 or 5 months after application, you are able to grant your passport.
So 6-month processing time.
Yes, processing time is continuing like that.
A question to you: how come the Europeans don't have any designated projects or government approved, and in the Caribbean, all the projects seems to be like it has to be government approved real estate projects, and with you or in Malta, at Cyprus, it seems to be no control. It's like any project as long as it's 250, like in your case, plus.
Yeah, there's just one control. There is a one proof. The government is looking. The money has come from outside and then deposit and invested to real estate, and the proof is value of that one. Apart from that one, government is not interested with the supporting any kind of projects or such kind of things. Maybe we are one of the latest country who is applying that citizenship program. Maybe others has much more experience of that one. But in Turkey, government is not a player in the real estate market also. Government is just regulator. So government is not caring about which projects you are investing. Government is supporting all the projects, and private sector is very strong in Turkey. But government is looking for, yes, you deposit your money and you hold your money, and then you are able to granting.
Okay, thank you.
This is the case.
About 3 weeks ago, there was a report by OECD that most applicants are using these programs, RBIs or CBIs, as a mean to do tax planning. Migration and Investment Council responded effectively, I think, and I quote from Bruno, he mentioned tax is not in fact an issue. Is that an issue with the Caribbean applicants? Very quickly, Nestor, is that an issue? People apply for these programs just to do tax planning, tax avoidance, or what are the reasons people would apply in the Caribbean, more particularly maybe St. Lucia?
You know, if one fully understands why someone applies for a passport or second citizenship, I think those types of positions really doesn't have a place. The world is very uncertain. There are children who are born in particular worlds or families, and they can't change those circumstances. There is war. There are leaders who are becoming more dictatorial in their behaviors. And people want an exit valve. They want an exit valve. The what ifs. This is what persons deal with, the what if. And therefore persons see those opportunities of having a second citizenship as being in ideal solutions to their problems. And sometimes those persons don't necessarily see the region as being the place to live or to raise their families. But they see it as an opportunity where if there is a situation that there can be this exit when required. Further to this, it is because those passports in the region provides those people the opportunity to visit visa-free a number of countries in the world. They see those passports as being a very lucrative and a very welcoming option for them. So from my perspective and from what we are seeing is that those persons who are applying for this program, it has nothing to do with taxation, but more has to do with the opportunity that such a passport provides them with outside of taxation.
In St. Kitts, maybe?
I will agree with Nestor. It's about the ability to offer your kids the flexibility and the exit strategy. It's also the ability to offer travel, free travel. A lot of the individuals who apply from countries that have restricted passports, it gives business people the opportunity to travel. In St. Kitts, with about 155 visa-free entry locations, it allows you to go. I think the whole issue from the OECD is, you know, we talk about tax evasion, and we don't really see it in our program. But somehow we're being lumped into residency, we're being lumped into common reporting standards. And common reporting standards is not about the CBI programs. It's about what the banks report and how the banks do their reporting. And I think the focus has been incorrect. And I think the IMC tried to point this out. I think as a group from the islands and so on, we have made that statement in the past. And we have also mentioned that our due diligence, we keep emphasizing that, our due diligence is stronger than most banks in the way we process our applications. So I think the intention, it seems to be directed at the Caribbean, but not only the Caribbean, but any country that has a CBI or residency program.
Well, it's interesting. If you look at the news recently, during the term Ms. May, or Prime Minister May was the Minister of Immigration in UK, all the investors that when migrated, they were actually not checked. The immigration UK thought the banks are doing their due diligence, and the banks thought the government is doing their due diligence. So for nearly 10 years, people were just walking in and bringing as much money as they wanted to, apparently. I don't want to be caught on that. So, but coming back to, is interesting here, we have 3 programs where they are basically saying their citizenship has great attributes in terms of access, free travel. I think Nestor, Ms. Khan, you mentioned 155 countries. But why Turkey? I mean, you guys don't have access to Schengen, you don't have access to many places. What do you think will attract people to your program?
Yes, it's a very good question.
What are the
Yes.
reasons.
Yes, it is not for the like other islands, and for Turkey is a little different, and also it is not tax reason because in Turkey there are tax, of course, and
Is it worldwide taxation for citizens?
sorry.
Worldwide taxations for Turkish citizens?
No.
No.
Yeah, if you are getting citizenship, the Turkish government is not caring about your assets outside of the country. They are just applying tax for the country. The tax is, but is not so high. It is around buying and selling tax is just 3% like that. For the income tax, there is a way to for the tax. For example, if you invest by means of funds, real estate funds, also the government for the foreign investor is not getting any tax. And also when you are transferring your money outside, also there is no such kind of tax.
So why these applicants are applying?
Why people is choosing Turkey? Because especially for the region, Turkey is a home country, and they are looking for a second home. And they would, when they retire, they would like to live in somewhere much more peacefully where. And also they are looking for when they move to there, they would like to work also in there. Turkey is supplying such kind of conditions. Yani, Turkey, especially in the region, there are very good demand. Last 2 months ago, we granted a new program, and there is very good demand, very good attraction, because people in here, for example, they cannot get when they get old, they cannot live in here much more. Retirement, no such kind of structure. But in Turkey, they can do that one. In Turkey, they can establish a business. In Turkey, they can live with the family because the region is very similar to each other.
So do you mean the factor that people will consider, that some will consider as important as free visa travel is, I call it livability? You can actually go and live there and be like anyone?
Actually, from other perspective, yani for the free travel side also, Turkey now, you can travel, if you have a Turkish citizenship, a Turkish passport, you can, more than 102 countries you can travel now.
Oh, okay.
Secondly, with this Schengen program, actually our relations getting well during that time with the Europe, and now we are waiting to accept with the Schengen program. After that one, 26 countries also will be added to that one. But current passport is allowing more than 102 countries.
Thank you. Well, the Caribbean seems to be proud of their access, and of course, all of them have access to primarily UK, Schengen, and Far Eastern country. What can you do to keep that? Because there was an article about last week in the Caribbean News Online that Schengen is maybe considering. What are you doing, considering to maybe revoke like you didn't have it a couple of years ago? What can you do to make sure you keep on getting fantastic clients and your due diligence? Malta is claiming to have the platinum standard in due diligence. They talk about their 4-tier system and their matrix to select people. What are you doing to make sure that you have the best and we continue selecting good applicants? Melinda and Dominica?
One of the things that we do is we work with multiple due diligence companies, and they compare their methodologies to see which ones are best in terms of best practices. And one of the things that they do is that they don't just do a background check, they do more penetrative checks. Actually, as Mr. Khan said, they do better checks than the banks, as they would do for investors. And while it's not the due diligence responsibility, they will do enhanced due diligence to ensure that the person we are granting citizenship is a reputable person, because we pride ourselves on having a respectful program across the Caribbean and Dominica. We ensure that we work closely with them and we emphasize the quality over the quantity. So while we have ease of processing, due diligence is number one.
Okay. In St. Lucia, do you guys are you gonna maybe introduce new ways of ensuring your applicants are better or more qualified, no negative in the past, maybe even predicting the future, like a matrix that tries to look at their profile? You talked about introducing maybe biometrics in St. Kitts at the application. Anything, what are you doing to make sure you can keep on the attributes your citizenship has?
St. Lucia has recognized from the onset that there's only one way to do this. There's only one way in which we can maintain the relationship with all of those countries who have graciously given us access to the countries visa-free. St. Lucia has also recognized that for this program to become or to remain sustainable, there's only one way to do this. If this program is to touch the lives of the region and the people in St. Lucia, there's only one way to do it, and due diligence is the answer. So for St. Lucia, we have never moved away from this principle. We are continuously in discussions with a lot of our international governments and giving them a window of opportunity to see essentially how we do it. And we also try to get feedback from them as to how do they see the process. In regard to our due diligence, I can say to you that there is a three-pronged approach. We expect all the international promoters who bring business to us, that they know those clients as well. Like Dominica, like St. Kitts, like Grenada. We also hire third-party due diligence firms to undertake those background checks for us, to have an appreciation as to who those people are. But we also believe that despite those due diligence firms, despite our own internal matrix, our own risk model, we know that there is one information that is amiss and must be obtained, and that is the intelligence information. Then the question, in response to your question as to what else are we doing, we have situations where we go to the intelligence community and they are unable to identify some of our applicants for a lot of reasons. Some of those reasons is that you have housewives who have never traveled anywhere, and therefore there are no footprints of those people in the world. And there are some people, there's some bad people in this world who would camouflage their footprints, and therefore they are unable to be identified. But we felt that those numbers can be very large, and St. Lucia had to deal with this at one point in time. So the question is, when we speak to the intelligence community as to how we are better able to identify our applicants beyond what we're doing, and it does appear that biometric is the way forward. So we are now, we have engaged fully a well-established biometric company. I believe that the government has made a decision as to go in that route. So in the coming months, we are going to be finalizing our relationship, and St. Lucia is going to go the biometric way. But Sam, I think I can't say it anymore to say that there's only one way we can maintain the viability of this program. And there's only one way in which we can ensure that those countries who have graciously given us the opportunity to be at the doorsteps is that we ensure that the due diligence is undertaken at every single stage of the process.
Thank you. We're talking about selection, but there's also post-selection, is after you get your citizenship. There are countries like Malta, for example, if you look at their Citizenship Act, Article 14, mentions about if you commit crimes within 7 years of you obtaining the citizenship, and if that crime is passable of 1 more year in prison, they might or they will or they could take away your citizenship. Any examples in your countries you have thought? I know that, for example, in St. Kitts, we saw people that have committed crimes, they had their passport revoked, but not citizenship. That was nice of you. In St. Lucia, you guys went a little further. You actually canceled people. In Dominique, any similar situation, or have you planned in Turkey to make sure you follow these applicants to make sure, A, they have not misrepresented themselves on the application, and B, they're going to continue make you proud, not create headaches. Melinda?
One of the things that we do in Dominica is we have a monitoring system for all applicants, and not just the applicant but their relatives, because you will find an applicant might apply his brother, his uncle. And while one applicant might have a reputable background, he might be linked through some other reason for his family. So these are the things that we monitor even after citizenship has been granted, and based on that basis, we might have an instance where we might revoke a citizenship because it's likely that you are implicated, and sometimes while we can uncover it in one aspect, we might not in the other. So then we have this monitoring system. We work with the due diligence companies who also does monitoring. If they do one, they can do the contacts and the links for us as well. So we ensure that we have close monitoring. That's an important thing.
In Turkey, any follow-up, or how do you select? Do you gonna have due diligence on people? Who's doing it?
Actually, we are very new in that program. Actually, we are very new in that program. For that reason, of course, it will be improved. Normally, how it is working, when you get the document from the, for example, let's say real estate land department, it is going to the immigration office and security office. And immigration office and security office making their due diligence, and then it's going to the presidential office, and presidential office is granting the citizenship. It's working like that. For that reason, for taking back after 3 years or 4 years, it is not definite yet, and there is no example of that one. But after that, I think it will be improved. But yes, it is risky for us. What is the risky? Because we are not waiting 2 years, 3 years, and then granting the citizenship. We are immediately granting the citizenship. This is a little risky way, but I think we will improve our due diligence actions much more in the future.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to say that due diligence and the monitoring of economic citizens, as we call them, is an ongoing process. The ongoing process is done through our international law partners. As Nestor mentioned, we all utilize international law, who reviews these names against their various lists. And we get a report on that. No decision is made without that report. Okay, and if the report is a negative, a red flag, as most of you around here have been accosting me of.
I hope no one has been on a red flag here.
There is no way back. It's a denial. But it's an ongoing process. So
for citizens that have obtained it, what about them?
And citizens who have obtained it, they also go through an ongoing process with international law enforcement and also with our due diligence companies, because with every contract we have negotiated with for due diligence, we negotiate that that individual that we have sent to them is on an ongoing check. So as things appear, because everything is at a snapshot in time. So as things appear, an individual might be flagged, that comes to us, we take the necessary action.
Okay. Well, citizenship, these days we've heard that President Trump wants to cancel the, I think as Article 14 in the U.S. Constitution saying anyone born within the U.S. territory is automatically a citizen. So there seems to be different, there are views that they want to create different tiers. What about the Caribbean and maybe Turkey or maybe Europeans? Your Prime Minister in Dominica, Honorable Skerritt, he said once, a citizen is a citizen is a citizen. So that says that they are like anyone else. In the Caribbeans, these economic citizens, do they have the same rights and obligations and like anybody else who was born in one of the islands? Melinda, maybe?
Can I?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Yes, they do. There's no discrimination once you're a citizen, regardless of whether you get it by naturalization or by birth or by marriage.
So any children born after you guarantee you have your citizenship, you apply for them like a regular
They apply,
citizen?
yes. It's not automatic. They would have to apply, and then they would be granted citizenship from their parents.
What about foreigners that haven't applied and they have a child in your island? Is the child citizen? Because they were saying, because President Trump said that the U.S. is the only country, which I can say is not true, because in Canada, if you're born in Canada, you're a citizen. But I think there's 30 other countries in the world that if you have a child in that territory, you're a citizen of that country. Is that so in Dominica?
Yes, there's no restriction.
St. Lucia? A citizen is a citizen is a citizen?
Yes. In St. Lucia, a citizen by the decision by investment or by descent, you're a citizen of this country and you have the same rights and responsibilities, but there's some salient differences and you can't escape that. And the salient differences is, one of those differences is in regard to the issue of revocation. You can't revoke the citizenship of someone who was a citizen by descent. But what you can do is that if they've committed a crime, they can be arrested
Rightfully.
and they can send to prison. For those persons who we've granted citizenship to under this program, as I said earlier on, they don't reside in St. Lucia. They don't want to reside in St. Lucia. So they're somewhere in the world, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in Lebanon, in Canada, wherever they are, in Turkey, wherever they are. If they've committed a crime, post-citizenship, the government of St. Lucia can go into that country and have them arrested. But the government of St. Lucia can work with that country in ensuring that this person's footprints are limited. And the only way we can do this is by revoking the citizenship and the passport. So therefore, they don't have access to that passport. But let me just say this, as much as this is a salient difference, I want to say that, and I'm sure the other islands can say the same, but for St. Lucia, it is not a decision we take very lightly. Yeah? But what must be understood is that when you apply for citizenship and your name enters the international police platform, that name is in the system. And therefore, there's automatic reviews. And if tomorrow this person is one of the major money launderer or child molester or whatever the case may be, pedophile, obviously will be alerted. And it's left for these countries to make the decision. The law enforcement, the intelligence community doesn't say, I want you to revoke. They say, you make the decision. And therefore, it's incumbent on every one of us to make what we think is the right decision for our country. So the truth is, revocation is a serious business, and it's not one that's going to be taken lightly by St. Lucia.
What about children born of economic citizens? Are they going to get automatically, or it's fairly straightforward to get citizenship for the kids that you didn't have when you obtained the citizenship or when you were naturalized?
Unfortunately, in St. Lucia, the Citizenship by Investment Act does not provide for add-ons. But come November,
yes.
The government of St. Lucia has recognized is one element that makes the program unattractive.
Yes.
And come November, the government is going to go to Parliament to make that specific amendment to the legislation. So I would believe in the new year of 2019, and we're going to make it retroactive. So all those persons who may have applied prior to the passing of this legislation will be given the opportunity to bring on the dependents.
So it's
as
retroactive.
well. So it's going to be retroactive.
We come back to Turkey in one second, but let's just finish the Caribbean. Les, what about St. Kitts? It used to be very inexpensive to add on a spouse to your file, but recently you guys have hiked up those prices very much.
No, actually, we didn't hack up the prices. The prices were there since 2014. I have just gotten cabinet approval, and it will be in a new regulation that's going to be published this week, where we've reduced the prices for the addition of a dependent from 75 or 50,000 to 35,000, and the addition of dependents down to 10.
Okay.
All right, and those are just the additions. But your first question about what is the difference between an economic citizen and a natural?
Is there any difference?
There is. An economic citizen cannot vote.
Never?
Never.
So even if come and live there?
There is that caveat in how long they live on the island as it qualifies. But right now, the requirement is, or the statement is, they cannot vote. And that's the basic difference. The other point, as Nestor mentioned, a citizen is a citizen for everything else. And you know, in the news in the last year or two, we've had situations where we've stood by our citizens regardless of the situation, and then dealt with it through the legal channels.
I just want to come, before we go to, well, let's talk about Turkey. What about these citizens? Are they going to have full rights as any other citizen that is of a Turkish origin?
Actually, the rule in Turkey is like that. If you grant for citizenship, all your family also is granting to that one, who is under the 18 years old. But above 18 years old, your children is not allowed. They should apply again. The rule is that one. After getting the citizenship, actually with the Turkish national, there is no any difference. Yeah, you are becoming.
So once I'm a Turkish citizen, if I have children after, they're going to be Turkish
they are getting,
citizens.
automatically they are getting the citizenship. Automatically they are getting to that one. And for the rules, for the votings, for other rights, there is no any difference.
No difference. So
It's treating like a Turkish people. Yeah.
Well, coming to one point about due diligence, there seems to be high emphasis on due diligence on applicants. But what about due diligence on service providers? What is the refusal rates? Turkey, you don't have it yet, but I mean,
Yes.
in Dominica, maybe St. Lucia and St. Kitts, and maybe the refusal, is that contributed to bad service providers, promoters, us not doing a good job, us not doing our own due diligence? Do you think we ought to do a bit of a due diligence before we file a case, Nestor?
St. Lucia has been in this program, just 2 years, and therefore we are developing relationships with our international promoters around the world. And those promoters are paramount for the growth of the business. But of course, I do recognize that there are some promoters who are promoting this program in a very bad way. Again, I am not happy with some of the comments that have been made about the program, and I think some promoters see this as simply a money-generating revenue stream for them, and therefore the kind of care that ought to be extended is not being extended. So look, I think in time, St. Lucia will get a point. St. Lucia is actually on the road of doing this, is that we are going to also be monitoring the behaviors of our service providers. We are going to set up some codes of ethics in regard to the way that they would advertise the programs for St. Lucia. And yes, we have absolutely no reservations when we get to that road in revoking the licenses of those people if that need does arise.
Thank you. Les, anything on this subject about us? Pointing at me.
Point at you, son. I believe that our promoters, it's a highly competitive market. But in knowing the market right now, I know that the promoters do follow a due diligence process. It might not be as deep as what we may follow.
Of course.
In St. Kitts, our requirement is if you're an international marketing agent, you have to do a due diligence process with the client. I do a due diligence process on you to make sure that you are giving me good clients. Yes, you are okay. Then you go through a local service provider who also, as a requirement late last year or earlier last year, we ensured or we mandated that local service providers also do a due diligence on the application that is being funneled through them before it comes to St. Kitts and Nevis, before it comes to my unit, I should say. Once it gets to my unit, then we go through the whole due diligence process, and it's a very detailed process. Most of us use the same due diligence companies. We go through an annual cycle of evaluating all of the international due diligence companies, and I keep changing them depending on the type of reports they give. Some are more detailed, some are less detailed, some do not have the experience in certain regions. So we go through this assessment on an annual basis, where each due diligence company is required to come to St. Kitts, make a presentation to my team, and we assess whether that due diligence company is going to meet our standards. About a month ago, I actually cut a due diligence company out because I didn't, the service wasn't good. All right, and so you got to raise the bar.
You're mentioning standards. I believe there are talks in the Caribbean to create your own maybe think tank, maybe a relation office between all 5 programs about applicants. What's about that? Is that moving ahead? You're going to be able to talk with each other, all the 5 programs? And maybe a second part, are you going to talk with your European counterpart to make sure you standardize the industry, who you work with, what the actors?
There is an association that now exists, and the association consists of all the various heads of CIP. I think there's a lot more that this association can do and has to do, more so in the light of the recent issues with the EU and the OECD. But there is discussions, and there is some kind of standardization that already exists within the individual islands. But I believe there's always room for evolving and doing things in a much better way. So to answer your question, I think there is the platform is there, but I think we need to go a bit further with that platform, and our voices have to be heard. In regard to the EU, I think I've had the experience when I was the chief financial regulator for St. Lucia. I saw how the OECD's approach to the offshore sector and what the consequences were, and the same can happen with this program. So from my business, I think that it is so paramount, it's so important that the region come together as one to deal with the fundamental issues that it is now facing. And this may be the best approach in dealing with it rather than singly.
Okay. Well, I guess that's all the time they have given or allocated us. I've reserved about 5 minutes for some questions. I don't know if you have any questions, so the floor is open for questions. So, first question.
Sure. The shortest question, in the Constitution or the Citizenship Act for the Caribbean programs, and could be for the Turkey program as well,
Yes.
if the applicant provides false information, that will be one of the refusal, let's say, reasons. What about the providers if they provide false information?
Well, they cannot provide false. They have to assist.
We see.
Who wants to take it?
I can answer. I'll try this one. I think I know from St. Kitts, one of the St. Kitts and Nevis, one of the things that we do in our unit is monitor the number of denials coming from specific providers, and the necessary action will be taken against them. I have called certain providers to say, hey, listen, your denial rate is too high, maybe your quality is not up to par. Stop it or improve. So it's not a formal process, but I think it's something that we're working towards. I think also as one of the IMC's mandate is to try to regulate that environment, and I think we'll be talking more about it as we go forward.
I hope so. Jean-Philippe?
Hi. I wanted to add a perspective from Malta and Cyprus that were also included in the OECD report. And my main take on the report is that the report wasn't a blacklist. The media called it a blacklist, and it shifted us as representatives of the industry to defend it and to insist why we shouldn't be on it. This is a report that makes recommendations to financial institutions so that they recognize that these programs issue residence cards or ID cards that could be misused by depositors with banks. In fact, I think I take the report to be a very positive contribution to our industry because it actually it starts by recognizing the legitimate uses and the legitimate purposes of obtaining citizenship and residency by investment.
CBIs and RBIs.
Exactly. So, it then proceeds, it lists these programs that can be misused, but then it proceeds to make recommendations not to these countries, but to the banks. The banks should ask questions and ensure that they are not taken for a ride by their depositors.
So that's a good introduction. Now, what's your question?
I didn't say I was...
You don't have a question. Okay, any other questions? Gentlemen? Oh, sorry. Yeah, please.
Hi, panel. In terms of red flagging, how serious of an offense does someone have to commit for a red flag to come up? Because obviously, no one's perfect.
That's a good question, because in Malta, Article 14, it seems to be quite clear. Within 7 years committing a crime, and the crime should be passible 1 year jail term. So it's fairly clear what I can, what I cannot do.
In St. Kitts, the Citizenship Act, Section 7.2, gives you a list of items that may be red flags. But however, when we talk about red flags, we talk about red flags that may be coming from our international law enforcement. And these may be flags raised because a person is on a terrorist financing list, linked to terrorist activity, maybe anti-money laundering, fraud. These are things that will trigger a red flag coming from our international law enforcement. The units themselves have a different approach, which is doing the vetting of a file, going through the vetting process, doing the analysis, the financial analysis. And that becomes more of a query from St. Kitts and Nevis, an explanation as to what we see in the applicant's documentation as it pertains to what we see in a due diligence report. So there are two different things. When I talk about a red flag, it's very clear. It's coming from international law enforcement, and a red flag is a red flag. I cannot debate it.
Nestor, do you have maybe a unit within your unit that's going to follow up applicants to see after they got their citizenship what they're doing? Do you monitor your economic citizens? Is there provision?
Initially, when the program was first initiated, there was this idea that it would be good for us to monitor our citizens and to see how they can partake in the development of the country. But again, you know, there's so much to deal with. We haven't gotten to that level, but it's something that is has always been on the platform for discussion and to follow through. Yes.
In Dominica, same question. In Dominica, is there unit within the unit or people within the unit following up on people that have obtained the citizenship to see what they're doing, their whereabouts?
Well, we have the risk assessors, or actually that's what I do.
Is it regional?
It's not a unit, but a few persons who work closely with diligence companies who monitors them, and then for that we make decisions as to whether they should be revoked and what are the next steps.
Okay. Because Antigua, they are monitoring. When you go to renew your passport after 5 years, they are going to do a due diligence on you again. Nothing like that in Turkey or...
No.
Pardon? What?
Your question was what happens after the grant of citizenship?
Yes. Is the process continuing
I see.
beyond?
I misunderstood your question.
Yes.
No, there isn't.
No, there isn't. Because Antigua does it after 5 years.
And you're correct, because Antigua's program requires an additional due diligence to be done after 5 years. But I think we all follow a similar process because of our international law enforcement partners and our links to the FIUs. In my case, it's the FIU, who will get called on any exception that occurs.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's a question, the young lady. Microphone, please. Microphone now.
Hi panel. So my name is Fabienne de Blois and I work for SRM, which is one of the providers of due diligence for some of the speakers on the panel. And I think it would be interesting to just bring it back to the rights of economic citizens in the various jurisdictions and ask you if there is any instance whereby you as governments have provided consular services to a newly naturalized economic citizen, perhaps in a third country rather than their country of initial citizenship.
Thank you. Go on, Melinda.
Actually, we do at the Dominica High Commission office in London and at the consular office in Greece. We offer services to applicants so they can renew their passports or if they want to add visas to their passports. So we actually offer it to them.
Yeah, because in Dominica they do that. Well, I think your question was more consular assistance in terms of if they were in trouble somewhere.
Yeah.
I know that in St.
Yes.
Kitts, I had a client in France, and the honorary consul in Paris and the High Commission in London. They were quite active, helping their client establish his identity and citizenship. So, any example? Well, you guys are new in town, but I guess with Turkey is going to be great.
Turkey,
you have embassies all over the place.
Because we are newly starting with that process. But as a government, what we did, we established a special office managed by the government, and taking the applications also, and also interesting with the problems of the applicants, and also investment office, Turkish investment office also interesting with the issues, with the problems when they arise. For example, government will open a few offices in different cities to take that problems and also to manage from the one point.
Very good. Well, we have time for one last question. Dr. Sadir in the back from Malaysia. Dr. Sadir, I believe you're from Grenada.
I would like to raise this question to the distinguished representative of Turkey regarding the obligations and rights of naturalized Turkish citizens. Does that
New Turkish citizens?
Yes. does that have any impact on the serving the military service for the children of the new citizens? Do they have to serve the military service, the mandatory military service?
It is a very big conflict now.
That's a
In
trick
Turkey, we are
question. That's a
discussing.
trick question.
We are discussing that issue so much nowadays, but it is not 100% definite. But children most probably will make military service. But I cannot say this is 100% is
Under discussion.
Under discussion still continue.
Well, thank you very much.
But in Turkey,
yes.
there is just one rule now. For the military service, you can finalize with paying money. Just you are doing 20 days.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for my panel. Thank you. Thank you.